Hi, my name is Amanda Morrow, and I am the clinical supervisor at Milestones at Onsite. I've spent so much of my career working with people who had poor boundaries, didn't know how to say no, found themselves constantly doing for others, and are exhausted. If this sounds like you, this might be a good time for you to sit and listen. When I think about self-abandonment, there are some really important things to know. We have, all of us, this is not just certain people, this is all of us. We have needs that really have to be met by parents and caregivers when we're children. That could be anything from attention to affection to allowing to acceptance. And when those needs don't become met, what ends up happening is we start looking for that in everyone else around us. And there are many ways that we do that, but oftentimes what they are is this idea of I'm going to do for everyone so that I can get this need met. And what ends up happening is we are handing this over to someone who probably has no idea that they've just been handed something, and B, will not be able to fulfill the need. So we create this pattern of self-abandonment, giving ourselves over or emotionally having expectations of others that only we ourselves can meet. This dynamic really shows up in all sorts of relationships. I think the attention really gets focused in romantic relationships, that becomes like a real identifier, but people who struggle with self-abandonment and giving of themselves to everyone really meet that in all of their relationships. It can be I do and I do and I do for my child and I get no thanks, or they run right over me, or my boss never sees how hard I'm working, or I do all this for my employees and they never say thank you, or I spent all this time cooking this dinner for my husband and he got home and he didn't so much as give me a thanks. And what is happening in those, it shows up in all of these relationships, but what is happening is there's an underlying need that is desperately wanting to be met, and there's not the conscious awareness of it, so there's no way to talk about it. And so when it's not met, when the return is not met, this resentment, this exhaustion, this anger builds, and they try harder and harder and harder. You know, one of the symptoms of codependency is attempting to meet our abandonment needs through others. And abandonment needs, oftentimes when we think of abandonment, there is an idea of a parent left or was not present in the home. And that is true. I mean, that is a very basic understanding of abandonment, but there is also emotional abandonment. And emotional abandonment is the idea that there was never a parent who could be emotionally present for my needs, who could be present with me with a feeling, who could help me work through a feeling, who could even name their own feelings. And so in that, we recognize that the way that I could receive love, could get attention, the list goes on, was to do something. Maybe it was to really take care of a parent. Maybe it was to perform really well at school. Maybe it was to have some sort of special talent. Or maybe it even was to be in relationship with someone else. And those start to become these dysfunctional patterns that show up of how we find ourselves in codependency getting these unmet emotional abandonment needs triggered, activated, and really lost. Something that I see in a lot of clients that I work with is that their inability to stop means that I have to feel some sort of worthlessness, some idea that I don't matter, some lack of value, because they have attached an identity and a value into doing. I think the other important thing to name is if we look at this from an addiction standpoint, one of the characteristics that we frequently talk about is in addiction is the idea of being powerless. And so in terms of codependency and this idea of I can't find myself stopping, there's the idea of like, yeah, because I'm getting my value and my worth out of this. My identity is attached to this. But there's also the idea of, and I am powerless. If you're still with me and you can say, this is really matching a part of my story, I really feel myself connecting to a lot of this work, I'd like to invite you into an exercise that might feel helpful for you, just to get more clarity. So everyone can get out a piece of paper and something to write with. And I want you to make a few columns. And in those columns, what I first want you to name is the behavior that's really exhausting you. What are you doing that just keeps you running in circles? List them all out. There's no wrong answer, just as many as you can. And then in the other column, I want you to maybe write down, what do you believe would happen if you stopped engaging in those behaviors? One of the reasons that I want you guys to even try this with me is this is what we would vaguely call a little bit of an inventory, and it helps us start to look at fears that keep us stuck, and it also helps us to maybe guide us in the direction of some boundaries that need to be set, as well as here's some other areas of my life that need some extra support and extra help, whether that's with friends who can relate, support groups who can relate, or a therapist who can walk me through this. Anytime we look at fear in a way that we've been doing something in our life, it is really, really scary to think about doing something different. And this way that you have been living your life is a pattern that you develop to help you survive for a long time, maybe decades, maybe just a few years, but it's helped you in a lot of ways. So the idea that I might have to let this go or try something different can be really, really scary. And I think what I want to offer to that, and what I hope you can hear, is that bravery and courage doesn't come without fear, that those are necessary ingredients for us to take hard steps and to do things that are uncomfortable. And that on the other side of this is a really big world, because you get to see yourself in a way that you never have. When we think about taking this step and doing something different and making a change in our life, I'm reminded of a client I worked with who really said, I don't really know who I am outside of a mom or a wife. And through the trauma work that she was able to do, and through just this idea of setting up boundaries and really being open to having a limit to herself, she fell in love with herself all over again and was really able to find a sense of self that was not attached to succeeding, that was not attached to what she gave others, but more attached to this internal, inherent worth and goodness that I believe we all have. And that's my hope for you too, is that you can find your way to that yourself through the work that you do. If you find yourself connected to this and want to do some deeper work, I know that Onsite and Milestones has many offerings that may be available to you that can help you get on the road to recovery and healing. You can also click on the link to speak with someone from our admissions team. I want to leave you with this skill to practice. And when you feel inclined to help someone, to offer something, one thing I'd like for you to ask yourself is, did they ask for my help? And if they didn't ask, that's a good opportunity for you to pause and sit with the feeling that you're having internally. If they did ask for your help, I think the other thing that I would ask for you to think about is, am I willing and am I able? And if I'm not both willing and able, that's another opportunity for you to sit with yourself again. And the more that we sit with ourselves, the more that we learn about ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was Why You Give Everything and Get Nothing Back. We'll see you next time.